The headlamp beam shook violently across the ice wall, and behind the camera lens, Dmitry Volkov's breathing sounded like a broken engine struggling to start. At 347 pounds, he was climbing the most dangerous mountain on Earth during storm season, alone, without a guide, filming himself for a YouTube channel with exactly 127 subscribers. The last video on his camera shows his gloved hand reaching toward a fixed rope that isn't there anymore, cut loose by rockfall 3 hours earlier. Then the camera drops, tumbling 400 feet down a crevasse, where it would stay frozen for 6 years, until a Sherpa recovery team found it wedged against a wall of blue ice. Dmitry had announced his K2 Fat to Fit challenge on March 15, 2017, standing in his apartment in Novosibirsk, wearing climbing gear that barely fit around his massive frame. He weighed 347 pounds and had never climbed anything higher than the stairs to his third-floor apartment. His plan was simple: climb the second highest mountain on Earth and lose 100 pounds in the process, filming every step for his YouTube channel called Big Dreams, Bigger Body. He genuinely believed the altitude would melt the weight off, and that he would return home as a completely different person. The comments section was brutal, but Dmitry pinned the worst ones to the top and replied to each with a single word: watch. Nobody expected him to actually buy a plane ticket to Pakistan. Dmitry Volkov was 34 years old and worked nights at a computer repair shop in Siberia. He had been overweight since childhood, weighing 200 pounds at age 12 and gaining steadily every year after that. His mother died when he was 28, leaving him alone in their apartment with nothing but her medical bills and a growing obsession with watching mountaineering videos on YouTube. He would sit for hours, watching climbers summit Everest, K2, and the other death peaks, eating entire bags of chips and promising himself that someday he would do something incredible too. The YouTube algorithm kept feeding him more extreme content, and eventually he started commenting on videos, then making his own response videos, talking to his camera about his dreams of climbing while eating dinner alone every night. His first video got 12 views and 3 comments, all telling him to lose weight before he tried anything dangerous. The second video got 8 views. By his 10th video, he was down to 4 regular viewers, all of them just watching to mock him in the comments. But Dmitry kept filming, kept talking about his mountain dreams, and kept gaining weight. He reached 347 pounds in February 2017 and realized he had 2 choices: give up completely or do something so shocking that nobody could ignore him anymore. K2 kills 1 in 4 climbers who attempt it, even experienced ones with professional guides and perfect weather windows. The mountain sits on the border between Pakistan and China, rising 28 to 151 feet above sea level through some of the most unstable weather patterns on the planet. Storms can appear in minutes, temperatures drop to minus 60 degrees, and avalanches happen without warning. Most climbers spend 2 years preparing for K2, including multiple practice climbs on other major peaks. They hire Sherpa guides, use supplemental oxygen, and wait for perfect weather windows that might only last a few days each season. Dmitry bought his gear on credit cards and booked his flight to Islamabad 3 weeks after making his announcement video. He had never used crampons, had never slept in a tent above 1,000 feet elevation, and his idea of training was walking up and down the stairwell in his apartment building while carrying a backpack full of books. He spent $18,000 he didn't have on equipment that was completely wrong for K2, including a sleeping bag rated for temperatures no lower than minus 10 degrees. When he arrived at base camp on June 3, 2017, other climbers thought he was a journalist, or maybe someone's overweight uncle who had gotten lost. The base camp coordinator, a Pakistani climber named Rashid Khan, refused to let Dmitry attempt. The mountain without a guide. Professional K2 guides charge between $35,000 and $65,000, money that Dmitry obviously didn't have. He spent 3 days arguing, showing Khan his YouTube videos as proof that he was serious, explaining his weight loss plan and how the thin air would force his body to burn fat for fuel. Khan had seen plenty of inexperienced climbers die on K2, but he had never seen anyone attempt it at 347 pounds. He finally agreed to let Dmitry try to reach Camp Warren, about 1,000 feet up the mountain, with the understanding that he would turn back immediately if he showed any signs of altitude sickness or exhaustion. Dmitry's first day on K2 was a complete disaster that somehow didn't kill him. He made it 200 feet up the mountain before his crampon straps broke because they were designed for feet half the size of his. He fell backward into the snow, slid 50 feet downhill, and ripped a hole in his climbing suit that let freezing air rush directly against his skin. Other climbers helped him back to base camp, gave him duct tape to patch his gear, and strongly suggested he go home immediately. Instead, Dmitry spent that night filming a video where he promised his 127 subscribers that he would reach Camp 1 within 48 hours, no matter what it took. His YouTube channel exploded overnight. The video of his first climbing attempt got 5,000 hours views in 6 hours, then 2,000 views by the end of the week. Comments poured in from around the world. most of them begging him to give up before he died, others cheering him on and calling him an inspiration. Dmitry had never experienced anything close to viral fame, and the attention became more addictive than food had ever been. He started filming multiple videos per day, showing his meals, his gear repairs, his conversations with other climbers who thought he was insane. His subscriber count jumped to 2,000, then 5,000, then $1,000. The problem was that his audience expected him to keep climbing. Between his failed first attempt and his successful reach of Camp 1, Dmitry's daily routine became a circus of desperation and delusion. He woke up every morning at 3 a.m. to film his breakfast preparation, showing his 1,000 growing subscribers exactly what a 347-pound man eats before attempting to climb a death mountain. His meals consisted of instant oatmeal mixed with protein, powder, energy bars that he could barely chew in the freezing air, and massive amounts of melted snow that he claimed was helping him detoxify at altitude. The comments section had become a battleground between people begging him to stop and others encouraging him to push harder, with Dmitry reading every single comment out loud in his videos and responding to the cruelest ones with increasing anger. His second attempt to reach Camp Y lasted 18 hours and ended with him crawling on his hands and knees through snow that other climbers walked through easily. The footage shows him stopping every 20 steps to vomit into the snow, his massive frame shaking with exhaustion as he tried to convince his camera that he was just getting warmed up. Other climbers had started avoiding him completely, partly because his constant filming disrupted the quiet concentration that high-altitude climbing requires, but mostly because watching him struggle was too painful to witness. A German expedition leader named Klaus Hoffmann approached him after his second failure and offered to pay for his flight home, explaining that K2 had already killed 3 experienced climbers that season, and that Dmitry's was attempting something that would definitely end in death. Dmitry responded by filming a 20-minute video where he called Hoffmann a jealous hater and promised to reach Camp 4 within 10 days. Dmitry reached Camp 1 on his third attempt, taking 14 hours to cover a distance that experienced climbers finish in 4 hours. He collapsed inside his tent and didn't move for 18 hours straight, but when he woke up, he immediately started filming again. The video from Camp I got 4,000 views and 15,000 comments, launching his channel into YouTube's trending section for extreme sports. Sponsors started reaching out, offering him free gear and energy drinks in exchange for product placement. A documentary filmmaker from Germany contacted him about following his climb with professional cameras. Suddenly, Dmitry had more attention than he had ever imagined possible, but it all depended on him continuing to climb higher up a mountain that was already trying to kill him. Camp Y sits at 19,685 feet above sea level, high enough that most people experience severe altitude sickness, headaches, nausea, and difficulty sleeping. Dmitry's body was struggling with problems that went far beyond normal altitude adjustment. At 347 pounds, his heart was working overtime just to pump blood through his massive frame, and the thin air made every breath feel like drowning. He developed a cough that sounded like his lungs were full of broken glass, but he kept filming. Videos where he insisted he felt great and was already starting to lose weight. His face looked gray and swollen in the camera footage, his lips had turned blue, and he was moving like an old man, even though he was only 34. The smart decision would have been to descend immediately, spend months training at lower altitudes, and return the following year with proper preparation. But Dmitry's subscriber count had reached 25,000, and the comments kept pushing him to go higher. People were calling him a hero for attempting something that seemed impossible, while others were betting on how high he would get before his heart gave out. He was making more money from YouTube ad revenue in 1 week than he had earned in 6 months at his computer repair job. The attention was intoxicating, and he convinced himself that he could handle whatever the mountain threw at him. His plan to reach Camp 2 was supposed to take 2 days, but Dmitry spent 5 days struggling up slopes that other climbers covered in hours. His progress video showed him stopping every 10 steps to catch his breath, leaning against ice walls and gasping like he had just sprinted a mile. His climbing gear was falling apart from the stress of supporting his weight on technical terrain, and he was burning through food supplies 3 times faster than normal because his body needed massive amounts of calories just to function at altitude. Other climbers offered to help, but Dmitry refused all assistance because his viewers expected him to succeed alone. The route between Camp 1 and Camp 2 includes a section called the Bottleneck, where climbers must navigate around, hanging glaciers that can collapse without warning. Most experienced mountaineers cross this area as quickly as possible, spending no more than 2 hours in the danger zone. Dmitry took 8 hours to cross the same section, stopping frequently to film himself and explain his weight loss progress to the camera. His slow pace meant he was exposed to avalanche risk for 4 times longer than any sane climber would accept, but his subscriber count had reached 28,000, and he was earning $300 per day from YouTube ad revenue, more money than he had ever seen in his life. During his third day climbing toward Camp 2, Dimitri's left crampon completely failed, the metal spikes separating from the boot attachment because the straps couldn't handle his weight on steep ice. He spent 3 hours trying to repair it with duct tape and rope, filming the entire process while sitting on a narrow ledge 21,000 feet above sea level. The repair job was obviously temporary, but instead of descending to replace the gear, Dimitri decided to continue climbing with equipment that could fail at any moment. His reasoning, explained to his camera, was that real mountaineers adapt and overcome obstacles instead of giving up at the first sign of trouble. The footage from this repair session shows something disturbing that Dimitri either didn't notice or chose to ignore. His fingers had started turning black from frostbite, not just the tips, but entire sections of each finger down to the first knuckle. Frostbite at that stage requires immediate medical attention and usually results in amputation if not treated within hours. Instead of descending, Dimitri wrapped his fingers in duct tape and kept climbing, telling his audience that the discoloration was just part of the natural acclimatization process, and that he felt better than ever. Camp 2 sits at 22,966 feet, above the death zone where human bodies begin dying from oxygen starvation. Dimitri arrived there on June 18, 2017, after climbing for 2 weeks straight without proper rest. He had lost 23 pounds, mostly from dehydration and altitude sickness, but his body was shutting down in ways that had nothing to do with weight loss. His fingernails had turned black from frostbite. His vision was blurry from cerebral edema, and he was coughing up blood that froze solid before it hit the ground. The last coherent video he filmed shows him sitting in his tent at Camp 2, trying to eat an energy bar with hands that shook so badly he could barely hold the camera. Weather reports showed a massive storm system moving toward KD2 with winds, expected to reach 100 miles per hour and temperatures dropping to minus 70 degrees. Every experienced climber in the area was already descending to base camp or lower, but Dimitri made the decision that killed him. He announced to his 35,000 subscribers that he was going to attempt Camp 3 before the storm hit, claiming that the weather reports were exaggerated and that he felt stronger than ever. The comments section exploded with people begging him to turn back, but Dimitri had stopped reading comments days earlier. He was completely focused on reaching the next camp, convinced that his growing fame depended on continuing to climb higher. He left Camp 2 at 4 a.m. on June 19th, carrying a camera that was running low on battery and climbing gear that had already failed multiple times. The route to Camp 3 requires technical ice climbing over crevasses that can swallow a person instantly, and Dimitri was attempting it alone in pre-storm conditions, weighing over 320 pounds. Other climbers had warned him that the fixed ropes might not support his weight, especially if they were old or damaged by rockfall. He ignored every warning and started climbing by headlamp, filming himself as he struggled up ice walls that became steeper and more dangerous with every step. The morning of his final climb, Dimitri's behavior had become completely irrational. He spent 20 minutes filming himself eating breakfast, explaining to his 35,000 subscribers that he had unlocked his true potential and was now ready to show the world what real determination looks like. His speech was slurred from oxygen deprivation, his movements were slow and uncoordinated, and his skin had turned a grayish-blue color that indicated severe hypoxia. These are classic signs of high-altitude cerebral edema, a condition that kills climbers within hours if they don't descend immediately. Instead of recognizing the symptoms, Dimitri interpreted his disorientation as proof that he was entering a higher state of consciousness. He had stopped eating solid food 3 days earlier because his stomach couldn't process anything at that altitude, surviving entirely on energy gels and melted snow. His body weight had dropped to 318 pounds, but the weight loss was coming from muscle mass and organ function, not the fat burning he had promised his audience. Medical experts who later analyzed his final videos estimated that his body was consuming its own heart muscle to stay alive, a process that would have killed him within days even if he hadn't fallen into the crevasse. The decision to attempt Camp 3 during an incoming storm wasn't just dangerous, it was mathematically suicidal. Weather stations had been tracking the approaching system for 72 hours, predicting wind speeds that would make climbing impossible and temperatures that would freeze exposed skin in minutes. Every other climber on the mountain had already descended, below Camp Y or evacuated to base camp entirely. Dimitri was literally the only person above 2,000 feet when he started his final climb, ascending into conditions that professional mountaineers with decades of experience wouldn't attempt under any circumstances. The camera footage from his final climb shows exactly what went wrong. At 22 minutes and 14 seconds into the video, Dimitri reaches for a fixed rope that should have been anchored to the ice wall above him. The rope is hanging loose, cut by falling rocks hours earlier, but the camera angle makes it impossible to see that the anchor point has failed. Dimitri's gloved hand grabs the rope and puts his full weight on it, trusting that it will hold him as he steps across a crevasse that drops 400 feet straight down into the glacier. The rope snaps immediately, making a sound like a gunshot in the thin air. Dimitri's scream is cut off as he falls backward, and the camera tumbles with him, recording his body bouncing off ice walls as he plummets into the crevasse. The video continues recording for another 6 minutes and 33 seconds, showing nothing but darkness and the sound of wind howling through the ice. Then the battery dies, and the camera stays frozen in place for 6 years, until a Sherpa recovery team spotted it during an unrelated rescue mission. The audio from those final 6 minutes reveals details that investigators wish they had never heard. Dimitri survived the initial fall, landing on a ledge about 200 feet down inside the crevasse, and the camera microphone picked up his voice calling for help in Russian, then English, then Russian again. His words became increasingly desperate, as he realized that nobody could hear him, and that his climbing rope had been severed by the same rockfall that cut the fixed line. The temperature inside the crevasse was minus 45 degrees, cold enough to kill an injured person in less than an hour, and Dimitri's voice gradually became weaker and more confused as hypothermia set in. The most disturbing part of the audio comes at the 4-minute mark, when Dimitri apparently realized he was going to die and started recording a final message for his YouTube subscribers. His voice was barely a whisper, but the camera microphone was sensitive enough to pick up his words. "I proved everyone wrong. I made it higher than anyone thought I could. Tell my followers I kept my promise." Then there's nothing but wind and falling snow for the remaining 2.5 minutes until the battery died. Professional mountaineers who analyzed the footage later determined that Dimitri could have survived if he had been carrying proper emergency equipment. A satellite emergency beacon would have alerted rescue teams to his exact location within minutes. Ice screws and pitons could have helped him climb out of the crevasse, or at least reach a position where searchers might have found him. A proper winter sleeping bag and emergency shelter might have kept him alive long enough for rescue teams to reach him after the storm passed. But all of that equipment would have added weight and cost money that Dimitri didn't want to spend, and it wouldn't have looked good in his YouTube videos. Dimitri's body was never found. Search teams spent 2 weeks looking for him after the storm cleared, but crevasses on K2 can be hundreds of feet deep and completely filled with snow and ice. His disappearance made international news, with YouTube releasing a statement about extreme content and the responsibility of creators to consider their own safety. His final video, recovered from the camera in 2023, has been viewed over 12 million times, making it the most watched climbing disaster footage ever uploaded to the internet. The Volkov family received $18,000 in ad revenue from Dimitri's videos after his death, enough to pay off his credit card debt and his mother's old medical bills. His YouTube channel is still active, maintained by his cousin in Novosibirsk, and continues to gain subscribers who watch his final videos and leave comments wondering what might have happened if he had turned back at Camp Y, the last entry inning. His climbing journal, found at Camp the Second, reads, "Tomorrow, I prove everyone wrong forever." The camera that recorded his death now sits in a museum in Islamabad, displayed next to other artifacts from failed K2 expeditions. Visitors can watch the final video on a loop, seeing exactly how quickly everything went wrong for a man who thought he could lose weight and gain fame by climbing the most dangerous mountain on Earth. The exhibit placard lists his weight at time of death as 324 pounds, meaning he had lost 23 pounds in 2 weeks of climbing, exactly what he had promised his subscribers he would accomplish. Nobody knows if Dimitri thought about his 35,000 followers in the final seconds before he fell, or if he realized that his death would give him more fame than he had ever achieved while alive. The video ends with the sound of wind and falling snow, the camera lens gradually freezing over until the image disappears completely into darkness. 6 years later, that same camera revealed exactly what happens when someone confuses internet attention with actual mountaineering skill and tries to use the world's most dangerous mountain as a weight loss program.